my name is Michael Lucian, and I'm joined with a very special guest. Today we have Nancy Chaidez with us, who's running for Elk Grove City Council. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Michael.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. It's great to be here with you. I am the chair of the Planning Commission in the City of Elk Grove, the second biggest city in Sacramento County. This is my 7th year serving on the Planning Commission, and the main job of the Planning Commission is to make decisions about land use, what gets built, where it goes, and to make sure that all of the city's needs and the needs of the people who live there are met, so that we have the right balance of housing and jobs and places to shop and that sort of thing. That we have an environment that leads to a high quality of life.
Fantastic. And what about a little of your background? What's your interest in running for City Council? Where does that come from?
Sure. Well, I have been in Elk Grove for several years. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm raising my son in the City of Elk Grove. So I'm very vested personally in making sure that it remains a great place to live. Professionally, I've been working for several years in the public sector and in the private sector in making state and local public agencies more effective, more efficient, more transparent and accountable. Some examples of that in the private sector, I worked as a management consultant, and I would come in at the request of public agencies, everything from state level agencies down to convention and visitor bureaus, community colleges, and help them focus on their own missions and make sure that they spent their resources in alignment with their own goals. Then from there, I was invited to the State Assembly to help start a committee called the Committee on Accountability and Administrative Review. And that committee did government oversight full time. So we would call the heads of state and local agencies to the carpet and say, now why aren't you doing the job the law requires you to do? Why aren't you spending your money the way you're supposed to spend it? And we would improve government from the inside out. I'd hear from a lot of friends sometimes in government, they'd say, so, Nancy, why are you bringing up all of these problems? You're making us look bad, you're making things difficult. But I firmly believe that it's a job of government to identify its own problems and fix them from the inside out. We all know that there are a lot of reasons for people to be cynical about government and not trust government at every level. So I think it's very important for us to work from the inside out to identify the problems in government, resolve them, expose them, and move on to the next challenge. So I enjoyed that work very much. From there, I was asked to go to the Department of Education here in California. Superintendent Tom Torlakson asked me to come over and help them turn around a program called the Migrant Education Program, which serves the children of migrant farm workers, who, as you may know, move around quite a bit and miss a lot of school, so they fall behind academically. This program was failing by all accounts. The federal government had actually been threatening to take control of the program away, and California has 40% of the migrant kids in the nation, so it would have been a pretty big failure of the most vulnerable children in our state, and in fact in our country. So thankfully the department made some changes internally, brought me in, and we were able to turn it around. It was not an easy task. We really had to do a lot of healing among the stakeholders, reestablish trust, change the culture, but we managed to turn that program around. The federal government has given them the all clear, and it's personally very rewarding also. Not only is this a continuation of what I've done professionally, but my father was a migrant farm worker, so it's very rewarding knowing that my father would have benefited from something like this. So all of that has created the lens through which I see government. I come home now, I come home to Elk Grove, and I think there's something that we can do better here, and moreover, I can contribute to making sure that my city government is more well-run, more effective, more efficient, and more transparent. So that's ultimately what persuaded me to run for City Council.
I think you were starting to address it, but I live in Elk Grove. I love Elk Grove. I think it's great. It's a fantastic city, but obviously not a perfect city. It has its problems like any other. What do you identify as some of the biggest problems facing Elk Grove?
Absolutely. Elk Grove is a wonderful place to live, and I'd like to keep it that way, if not make it better. The most important problem that I would like to address in Elk Grove is our imbalance of jobs and housing. Elk Grove was born 14 years ago, fully formed as a bedroom community, and now our job as the city government is to create a more sustainable, more balanced economic future for the city, and the jobs housing ratio is a very important component of that. Currently, up until recently, the jobs housing ratio in Elk Grove was about half a job per housing unit, which is not a good place to be. That means most of our folks are commuting to Sacramento, Rancho Cordova to work. With the approval of the Southeast Policy Area, now that we have finished the master planning of our entire city, we will be potentially up to rounding 1 job per housing unit, which is a pretty significant improvement. It's still not getting us to where we need to be. I think the regional average is about 1.5 jobs per housing unit, so it's a very positive step. We are by no means done, but I was pleased to be a part of that decision and the design of the Southeast Policy Area to be a very jobs forward and jobs focused plan. So that's first and foremost.
Absolutely. Well, you definitely know what's going on in Elk Grove. Mm-hmm. Have you identified some of the goals you have personally moving our city forward?
Absolutely. So jobs, as I mentioned, is very important. The other is one of the things I've already been engaged in doing, but I want to continue and make it a little bit more of a focus on the City Council's agenda. And that is what you talked about at the beginning. Elk Grove is a great place to live. I want Elk Grove to remain a great place to live, and if possible, be an even better place to live. And what I mean by that is every time a decision comes to the City Council, the way it has come to me on the Planning Commission, I want to make sure that it enhances the quality of life and that at a minimum it doesn't make it worse. For example, I had an opportunity recently to vote on our Civic Center project. I approved the Civic Center project. I approved a competitive aquatic facility which will be great for the kids who live in Elk Grove and will also draw in swimmers from around the region. What I didn't approve, and the Planning Commission along with me, we all denied a commercial water park that would have been 25 feet from hundreds of people's backyards. And we're talking towers up to 80 feet for water slides and zip lines. You can imagine people make a lot of noise when they're using this kind of facility, and I didn't think that was a compatible use. I didn't think that would be protecting our quality of life, that is the kind of service that we wanted to provide to our residents here in Elk Grove. So along with the rest of the Planning Commission, I denied that, and thankfully our City Council, who had been the proponent of this project, agreed with our decision. So making sure that as we're working on economic development, as we're working with all of these moving pieces, that we do not lose sight of the fact that what is most important is what is it like to live in Elk Grove. And similar to that is public safety. So it's there's kind of a litmus test, right, that we look at with every decision and with every project. And Elk Grove has grown by leaps and bounds. As I think I said earlier, we're the second biggest city in Sacramento County. We're at 160,000 residents now, at least. We're probably a little bit over that. And we've had our growing pains. One of them has been that our police force has not kept pace with the population growth. We are below the staffing ratios that we should be based on statewide averages and based on national best practices. So I want to invest in public safety before we develop a crime problem.
Sure. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to back up a little bit. If the viewers are anything like myself, I realized I didn't know much about the structure of the council and how decisions are made in Elk Grove. I've been living there and the decisions were obviously getting made, and I had no idea how that was. Can you describe that structure so that we can kind of get a better grasp on how things go?
Absolutely, absolutely. So on our City Council, we have 4 council members and 1 directly elected mayor. The latter is a newer development in Elk Grove. We've only had a directly elected mayor in Elk Grove for 2 years, and that mayor is going to be reelected because he's running unopposed this year. The mayor is currently reelected every 2 years. The council members run for 4-year terms, and since we have an even number, those seats are staggered. So this year, for example, the 4th district for which I'm running is up, and the 2nd district is up. The incumbent in the 2nd district is not being challenged, so the 4th district is the only one that's a competitive race right now. Mr. Bob Trigg, who was the appointed incumbent, has thankfully endorsed me, and the electoral system is actually really interesting in Elk Grove, and it's one thing that's unusual. Whenever I tell folks around the city or around the state how we do things in Elk Grove, no one's ever told me that they do it the same way, so I don't even know who else does it the same way. But we are neither at large and we are neither elected by our district purely. We are a hybrid that they call from district. So what that means is that as a candidate for the 4th district council seat, I am competing only against those other candidates for the 4th district. All of us live in the 4th district, but the voters across the entire city will vote on all of the districts districts, including mine. So I think what the city is trying to achieve there is some measure of balance, that we are representatives of a district, but we are accountable to the city as a whole.
You mentioned some of the other candidates that are running against you. I was wondering if you could tell us what makes you different, what stands you apart. Why should we vote Nancy?
Absolutely, absolutely. So first and foremost, the thing that makes me stand apart is I'm the only one of the candidates with any experience on the city side, with any real experience and knowledge about the issues that our city is facing and experience addressing those problems. That's most important. Related to that, the people of Elk Grove have gotten to see that I'm committed to public service. They've gotten to see that I'm not one of these folks who comes in and says, you know, I'm going to run for an office or be appointed to an office just to use it as a stepping stone. I think that 7 years shows that I am committed to actually doing the work. I genuinely enjoy the work. You know, the polite term sometimes is policy wonk. You know, if I could just click my heels like Dorothy and be up on the dais for the city council and doing the work, I'd be happy as a clam. But of course, I respect the democratic process, so I've had to learn how to be a candidate. But I really enjoy the work. And no one else who's running for this seat has the diverse, very broad support that I have. I'm proud to have as much support from Republicans as I do from Democrats. It's a nonpartisan race. I'm a nonpartisan decision maker. What I've told every individual and every organization who is supporting me is that I will make every decision in the best interest of the residents of Elk Grove. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Great, and I think we're about, 20 days away from the election thereabout?
Yeah.
How's your campaign going? What do you need? What if people want to get involved, what can they do with you for the next couple weeks?
We are exactly 20 days out, so we can always use more volunteers to help us contact voters. From here to November 4th, the most important thing that we need is to follow up with voters, ask them to support Nancy for Elk Grove City Council, explain to them what it is that I want to achieve, what I think we can do together in the city of Elk Grove. So if they can make phone calls, if they can help us knock on doors, distribute flyers, all of that is important. But first and foremost, vote. Please vote on November 4th. Folks who are absentees, please mail those in or carry them in to the nearest polling place. And you know, every vote counts, particularly in an election like this. Oftentimes, people will vote the top of the ticket, which is, you know, they'll vote on the federal races, they'll vote for Congress or governor, and maybe because they have less information, they drop off and they don't vote on the local races. But someone pointed out to me the other day that every decision that we make on the local level affects those who live in our city, which is not necessarily true of those offices higher up. So if you were going to limit your time, I would say start at the bottom.
Great, and you mentioned contacting you. Do you have contact information for the viewers?
Absolutely. My cell phone number, which I give out freely and is printed on all of my materials, is 916-844-2402. You can also reach me at nancy@nancychidas.com. And our campaign office has been up and running for a couple of months now, and we are located at the intersection of Bighorn and Laguna Boulevard in Elk Grove and the Sprouts Shopping Center. It's the one with all of the Nancy signs on it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for stopping by to speak with us. That was really informative, and all the best to you in November.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Great.